Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I have for you a big compilation of my favorite scary stories so far. I don't have new stories for you guys today, cause I'm on vacations, but I'm still going to upload a new video in a couple of days. I have a question for you, and I would really appreciate it if you would leave your answer in the comment section below. I'm thinking about doing more videos for you guys, like 5 or 4 videos every week, but these are going to be smaller compilations like 15 minutes long. So what do you think that is best for you? 4 or 5 small compilations every week? Or 2 bigger compilations? Let me know in the comment section below. But for now guys, grab your flashlight and follow me into the darkness. My mother tried her best to keep me and my brother Miles out of the woods behind our house. It was too dangerous, she'd sigh. We could trip and fall and hurt ourselves. We could get lost. 2 little boys could get into all kinds of trouble out there. She went so far as to have an 8-foot fence around the backyard, and she padlocked its gate. For some, that may have been enough, inconvenience killing curiosity. But for me and Miles, it only made what laid beyond all the more tantalizing. It was weeks before we finally got our chance to sleep out of the front door. Mom was distracted with an overflowing toilet, and Miles looked at me with a conspirator's nod over his shoulder, signaling the time had come. We crept along the hall, down the stairs, and across the foyer, where we grabbed our hats and jackets before making a break for it. It was a cool autumn day, and the leaves scratched noisily beneath our feet as we rounded the house. We were moving fast, nervous that Mom would realize we'd disappear, and we crossed through the tree line at a near sprint. The light afternoon sun spilled through the leaves in glittering columns, casting the woods in a golden flow, and I followed Miles with a wide-eyed grin, both nervous about breaking the rules and mesmerized by this forbidden place. My big brother took the lead, carelessly stopping his way through the underbrush. We ran and climbed over fallen trees and laughed, unconcerned with the passing of time, or that Mom might become worried. We were too enveloped in our mischief. A gentle incline took us down to a stream, and we trailed along beside it for a time, pausing occasionally to skip any suitable stones we found along the way. "Do you think Mom's gonna be really mad?" I asked. For the first time since we made our escape, I'd taken a good look around, while Miles lined up another rock and realized that our house and its fence were no longer in sight. I wasn't even certain which direction we'd come from. The woods suddenly seemed so much bigger, intimidating, even, and I felt very small. Miles clapped me on my shoulder and grinned with all the confidence of a 10-year-old boy who knew he was up to no good but was certain he could talk his way out of it. "It will be fine, Warren. We'll go back soon. She probably hasn't even noticed that we're gone." I nodded, smiling as well. If Miles said it was okay, then it had to be. And onward we went. But Miles hadn't taken into account just how far we really had wandered, or just how late it really was. We had just started talking about turning around when the sun, and the temperature along with it, began to sink. As the shadows began to grow around us, I grabbed Miles' hand and clenched in between my own. Usually, he never would have let me do that, but just then, he held on as tightly to me as I did to him. "Come on," he said, the bravado from earlier fading as quickly as the light around us. It's this way." We doubled back, following the stream until we reached his head again, and he started to lead me up to the slope. Behind us, twigs snapped. I wiped my head around, but I couldn't see anything in the gloom that had settled across the woods. "It's nothing," he assured me, "just a squirrel or something." I nodded, not entirely convinced, and we started to climb again. Another twig snapped, this one closer. "Miles?" I whispered nervously. "It's nothing," he said again. The crunch of leaves being crushed slowly beneath a heavy footfall sounded right behind me. I screamed, and Miles yelled for me to run. He hauled me the rest of the way up the incline and threw me in front of him. I scrambled. I found my footing, and I was off. I could hear my brother, his panicked breathing, and I dared to look back at him. His face was pale. His eyes were dark, and over his shoulder, outlined against the night, something was following, something big. I turned back around and shrieked again. My legs pumped furiously beneath me, but I still felt slow, and I kept stumbling on the uneven ground. Miles shoved me along more than once, shouting for me to go. Over our frantic cries, I could hear the thing behind us, its ragged, deep breathing, pounding footsteps, and the smell, a cloying, rotting odor that stung my eyes and made it harder to breathe. My chest burned, my eyes stung with tears. I wanted to scream for my mother, but nothing would come out. Low-lying tree branches, invisible in the dark, clothed my clothes. If Miles hadn't been behind me, forcing me to keep going, my terror might have kept me rooted in place. I might have given up. "Warren? Miles?" It seemed like such a distant call, but we both recognized our mother's voice instantly. "Mommy?" I screeched. "Mommy, help!" Up ahead, still a fair distance away, I could see red and blue lights flashing through the trees. I could see the lights from the upstairs window of our house. "Mommy!" I screamed again. "Mom!" Miles joined in. "Boys!" Beams of light turned towards us, and the radio crackled. "We found them," a man's voice said. We collapsed into our mom at the edge of the woods, and all three of us fell to the ground, clinging to each other. "We are sorry," I sobbed into her shoulder. "We were being chased. Something was after us," Miles said at the same time. The cops Mom had called to look for us, who had gathered nearby and were within earshot, immediately turned their flashlights back towards the woods. They shined them slowly across the trees. Their eyes narrowed slightly, but all they found was empty forest. "Oh no," Mom breathed softly. "Mommy?" I looked up at her and was confused by her expression, a thin-lipped, tight mask of fear. She gathered us up and half dragged us back towards the house, leaving the police still searching the darkness. "What's wrong, Mom?" Miles asked. "Why couldn't you do as I say?" she moaned. "Why couldn't you stay in our yard?" "We are sorry," I said. "We won't do it again." "Oh, baby." She glanced down at me. "You won't even know what you've done. It wasn't you going into the woods that was the problem." She hurried us inside and slammed the door behind us, turning the deadbolt into place before looking at us again. "It's what you let back out." Outside, just beyond our fence, the cops began to scream. When I was 11, my dad and I tried to make our own maple syrup. I don't know how he convinced me on such a project, but somehow he did. So one chilly February morning, we woke up early and went out to the large maple tree in the backyard. Setting up the tap was easy. Dad drilled the hole and we hammered the spile in together. Within minutes, clear sap was dripping into the soda bottle we had hatched. "Check the bottle each morning," Dad said with a smile, "and write down how much we collected." "It's the coolest project ever," I told my friend Shelby on the bus to school. It felt good to put her in her place. She was always bragging about how she lives on a farm. "Dad lets me feed the pigs and milk the cows," she would say, flipping her hair. "And he pays me for it. I basically have a job, and I am only 12. But her dad was a total weirdo. Mine was cool, and gave me cool projects to work on. Anyway, on the morning of February 27th, I approached the tree as usual, skipping in the snow, humming "Walking on Sunshine" through the heavy scarf around my face. I walked around to the top and peered in. I gasped. The bottle was halfway filled with dark reddish liquid, not clear sap. I ran back to the house. "Mom! Dad!" I yelled. "There's something wrong." Dad followed me out into the backyard, not looking very concerned. I don't blame him. Last time I pulled him out here, it was because I found monster footprints in the snow, also known as raccoon footprints. "The syrup is dark now," I said, pointing rapidly at the bottle. "What happened? Did we rain it?" To this day, I don't think I've seen my dad so shocked. His face went white, matching the surrounding snow, and his mouth hung open. It's fine," he stuttered, pulling the bottle from the tree. "But I'll bring it in and take a look at it." He detached the bottle and brought it inside. I followed. "Go get ready for school. I'll take care of this." "I am ready." He sighed. Go, get me the encyclopedia from my study, will you?" As I walked down the hall, Mom's whispers to him echoed towards me. "What is it?" "I don't know." A sharp inhale. "It smells metallic-y. What do you think?" "I'm not sniffing that." "Okay, fine." I knew this whole maple syrup was dumb. The tree is probably diseased or something. Don't let her near it. "Okay, but…" "And get the rest of it out of our basement. I don't even have enough space for laundry anymore." I walked back into the kitchen with the encyclopedia, and they fell silent. "I'll drive you to school," Mom said, grabbing her keys and shooting a glare at Dad. When I got home, they seemed even more stressed. "Michaela," Dad said, sitting me down, "don't go near the tree, okay?" "Why?" Just don't, okay?" Apparently, my dad did not understand the concept of forbidden fruit. Now that he said it, I had to go back to the tree. So after my parents went to bed that night, I snuck out of my room, grabbed a flashlight, and ran into the backyard. It was bitterly cold, and the icy wind blew through my pajamas, but I soldiered forward until I was standing underneath a maple. As the beam of light fell over it, I saw a long red streak staining the bark, emanating from the spile, as if it were bleeding. I touched my fingers to it. They came away wet and red, and a chill coursed through my body. Blood? Is that what the dark stuff was? I walked around the tree, my flashlight bouncing off the bark. As I did, I realized there was a deep crack that ran horizontally across it, but it was too long, too perfect to be a natural crack. The bark shifted and jiggled. I jabbed my fingernails in it and pulled until a large panel of bark fell away. It hit the snow with a dull thump, and I screamed. Stuffed into a cavity of the trunk, still and lifeless, was the carcass of a pig, and in its belly was a small hole where the spile had been attached. I leaped back from the tree, screaming. The beam of my flashlight caught on the snow, and in it there was a fresh set of footprints leading up to the tree, but none leading away. I sprinted across the snow. I locked the door behind me, and then I glanced out of the window. In the darkness, I could make out a shadow climbing down from the branches of the maple tree. I was born and raised in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Unless you live nearby, you've probably never heard of it. Even people in the large Wisconsin cities, Madison and Milwaukee, don't know we exist. Wisconsin in general is known for our cheese, our cows, and our love of beer, and of course, for our excess of mental institutions and serial killers. Ed Gein and Jeffrey Dahmer hail from my home state. In case you've been living under a rock, they are two of the most infamous serial killers in America. I don't know if it's the cold climate or what, but we seem to breed quite a bit of crazy up here. Sheboygan is not immune from the crazy. We have this old abandoned asylum by the highway. It used to house the criminally insane, at least according to local folklore. This is where Milk White legend came from. Milk White was supposedly a patient at the asylum. He was born there, his mother being one of the inmates. No one knew what to do with him, so he just crawled around the asylum, eating scraps. He had no other kids to play with. He was an albino, and any form of light would horribly burn his skin, so he was never awake when there was daylight. Milk White grew up learning madness from the other inmates. Desperate for human companionship, something about that madness turned him from a human into a demon. The story is that one day he found a way to get in and out of the asylum. He got it into his head that he could go find friends from the city. He peered into the windows of every house to see if anyone was awake. If he found a child awake, he would steal them away. Of course, children are loud, so instead of taking them alive, he would use his huge teeth to crush their necks. He would prop up the corpses of the children in the asylum basement, pretending to have an entire room of friends. He would sing them nursery rhymes in the dead of night. The asylum was shut down a long time ago. Milk White had nowhere to go. So, they say, he still lives in the abandoned building and bringing back the bodies of any kid still awake after dark. This was all regarded as an urban legend, but I remember that story back from when I was a kid. There was an odd little rhyme that we used to sing at the playground. It went, "Hush now, sleep tight, or else beware of Milk White. He doesn't fuss, he doesn't fight. He'll kill you dead with just one bite." Parents would use this tale to scare their children into going to sleep. It worked well, or at least it did for me. I fully believed the myth up until middle school. I remember that's when a new kid moved to town. He was from New York City, so we all thought he had to be way cooler than any of us. His name was Jimmy. He had a New York accent and everything, and had a leather jacket. He wore it all year round, even in the middle of winter. He was never quiet about how much he hated in Sheboygan. My friend Hans and I made an uneasy friendship with him. Hans was 17, but dumb enough to be held back to middle school. He was huge compared to us. We'd been friends for a while. I actually grew up with his brother, Peter. Peter disappeared on a camping trip when we were 7. After that, I started becoming closer with Hans. We'd hang out, play video games, and just do nothing. He wasn't very smart, hence being held back for so long. But he was a good guy. I liked being his friend. I was a pretty typical 12-year-old, trying to appear cooler than I was. I wasn't particularly special, but I guess I was a good kid. Jimmy was the one with all the confidence. He would talk to girls and get himself out of trouble easily. He also thought he knew everything. It was Jimmy's idea to scope out the asylum. I think he was bored of the snow and wanted to do something exciting. That's when I told him about Milk White. "What a crock of shit," he responded. "That's a fucking baby story. You don't really believe that." I looked at Hans, who shook his head stupidly. Hans was pretty happy to have friends, so he would have done anything for Jimmy or me. I was scared, but I shook my head too. Jimmy decided we would go to the asylum at night. He joked about Milk White, calling him a pathetic excuse for a ghost story. Hans and I were horrified that he would mock the creature that haunted our childhoods, but we tried to act calm about it. We snuck at around midnight. Jimmy, like always, just wore his leather jacket. He led the way as we trudged around the snow towards the abandoned building. It must have been impressive once, but now it just looked decayed. While we were walking, Hans grabbed my arm and pointed to the ground. A set of footprints were in the snow. The prints were large, like that of a grown man, but there were toe marks, as if the person was barefoot. I shrugged at Hans. "Come on." We go to the main entrance of the asylum. Jimmy tried to open the door, but it was shut firmly. He kicked at it, but to no use. Hans was shivering. Looks like we can't get in." Jimmy laughed at him. "You fucking pussy. We haven't even tried yet." Jimmy has a terrible mouth on him. Hans and I were good boys. We never swore, but Jimmy was very different than us. He moved around to a boarded-up window. It was low enough that he could use his hands to pry under the boards. With a violent jerk, he pulled a plank away. We could see that there was no glass inside. Jimmy made a loud "aha" sound and fought the other boards loose. He pulled himself up to the window and slipped inside. Hans and I looked at each other nervously. I took a deep breath of cold air and hoisted myself through the window. I landed on a pile of broken boards. Apparently, other people had tried to get in as well, because there were planks everywhere. Jimmy was rubbing his leg. I think I fucking cut myself. I stood up and dusted myself off. Hans flew through the window with a heavy thump. He shrieked and held up his hand. A nail was embedded into his palm. Jimmy went over him and yanked the thing out. Tears poured down Hans' cheeks. Jimmy rolled his eyes. "You're a big fucking baby, aren't you?" He turned his back on us and started towards the hole. We all had thought ahead to bring flashlights, but they weren't much help. The holes were pitch black. We walked along the wall, keeping a hand steady to balance. We heard a squeak from behind us, and I almost jumped out of my skin. Jimmy just laughed. "Scared of mice now too?" The entire time we explored the asylum, I barely breathed. It wasn't just the darkness, it was the unknown. We found empty wheelchairs and creepy-looking metal cots. Our flashlights scanned the blackness, but nothing moved. Once we had been exploring for an hour or so, I felt my heartbeat slow. Jimmy was obviously right. Milk White was just a baby story to scare kids. It was Hans who found the door to the basement. He pointed at it with his flashlight. Jimmy tried the handle, but it was stuck. He tried kicking down the door, but it just hurt his ankle. I stood silently. "You, big guy, kick the door. I want to see what's down there." Hans started trembling and shook his head no. Jimmy pushed him. "Come on, you big idiot. Do something useful for fuck's sake." Hans looked down, embarrassed. I stepped towards them. "Maybe we should go. Or maybe you should." We all stopped because of what we heard. It was footsteps. It sounded like they were coming up the stairs from the basement door. I stared open-mouthed at Jimmy, who was frozen in place. The footsteps were loud. They sounded like skin slapping on metal. "Turn off your flashlights now," Jimmy hissed. We all shut our flashlights off and huddled against the wall. Hans was shaking really bad. The footsteps kept going until they were almost right next to us. Then there was the sound of the doorknob creaking. It was completely dark, so we could not see a thing. All we could do was listen as the door slid open. That's when we heard the voice. It was the deep voice of a man, but sang unreasonably high. It sang, whispered, "Hush now, sleep tight." Jimmy was rocking back and forth. I could feel the fear emanating from him. He had his jaw clenched, and his teeth made a horrible crunch. The voice kept singing, "Beware, beware of Milk White." I must have trembled, because my thumb knocked the on button of my flashlight. In a single second, it illuminated the hallway, and we could see the source of the voice. All of us gasped as one. It stood barely 2 feet away. It might have been a man once, but now had the posture of a scorpion. It was naked, standing with its feet spread apart like an insect. The nails on its feet and hands were so overgrown they curled back into its skin. The teeth jutted from his mouth. They hung down as if they were too heavy for it to lift its head properly. Its skin, it wasn't white. Not like the rhyme said. It was stained red. He took a step towards us and whispered, "Kill you dead," with just one bite. And that's when Hans bashed my head in with his flashlight. I woke up on the floor of the asylum. Daylight. had only just crept into the sky. My head was pounding. I struggled to stand, but I must have gotten frostbite in the night. My fingers and toes were completely numb. I looked around and saw Jimmy passed out near me. He had a giant bruise on his temple. I don't know how I did it, but I managed to stand up and drag Jimmy out of the window. I wasn't strong enough to sling him over my shoulder, so I had to drag him through the snow. He made soft pain sounds, but didn't wake up. I made it to the tavern by the highway. They weren't open, but I pounded the door until my knuckles bled, screaming for help. The owner finally came to see what the noise was and let us in. He was visibly shaken by our appearance. He called the police and our parents. Soon, I was wrapped up in blankets and slowly beginning to feel warm again. Jimmy eventually woke up in the hospital with minor memory loss. I told the police my story, and they searched the entire asylum. They didn't find anything. No evidence of any foul play, except the blood Jimmy had lost. No one knew where Hans was. His parents were devastated. Now, they had lost 2 sons. Jimmy had no memory of the night's events. At least, that's what he said. My parents made me see a psychologist who told me I created the whole thing in my mind. She said Hans must have done something terrible to Jimmy, and I just blocked it out. After all, Hans was so much older and bigger than us, and then he left town. The psych implied it was sexual abuse. She said I made up the image of Milk White because I knew that from my childhood. It was easier than facing the truth. I went to bed before dark every night until I went away for college. I never went back to Sheboygan. They think it's because of what Hans did to me. But I know what I saw, and I know that Hans only hurt me to knock me out. He knew that Milk White can't get you if you're asleep. I still don't know if it's real. I mean, it sounds crazy. Of course it sounds crazy. I would be writing about it here if I sounded sane talking about it, and you probably won't believe me. Or maybe you'll just shrug it off. But I swear, there's a hand following me. This isn't just my imagination. It can't be, and it's been following me around for a pretty long time. The first time I saw it, I was 5 or 6. My mother told me and my sister good night and left our bedroom with the door open. And there was light in the hallway because my little sister was scared of the dark, and I wasn't about to complain about it. I closed my eyes to sleep that night, but I didn't feel tired. I just tossed and turned around pointlessly in my bed, and at one point I opened my eyes again and my gaze landed on the doorway. There was a hand there. It was just there, peeking out from the side of the door. I thought it was my mom playing some kind of trick or something, so I tried to call her out without showing that she was scaring me. I had a real fear of witches at the time, and I was secretly afraid that this was one. Then I blinked, and the hand was gone. My mom still came to see what the fuss was about, so I'd really called her. I hadn't dreamt that part. For some reason, I can't remember if I told her about it, but I have the feeling I didn't. Maybe I was ashamed of being scared of something that wasn't real, something I'd imagined. When I was about 10, we'd moved to a different house, and I slept alone. That night, I had a really bad nightmare, and when I woke up, I saw something pressed up against my window. I swear it had the shape of a hand, but then it just kind of flopped off. When I told my mom about it the next morning, she told me it was probably a bat or something else. A few moments later, I found a handprint on our bathroom mirror when the place was filled up with mist after my sister's shower. I knew I would sound stupid, but I asked her if it was hers, and well, it wasn't. And it was a bit too big to be my mom's. It looked more like a man's hand. I had no idea why a hand would try to leave a handprint on a mirror, but if it's real, then there's probably no real reason. I mean, it's just a fucking hand. It appeared again in a nightmare. Well, I'm not sure if it was a nightmare or if I was half awake, but I was in my bedroom in that nightmare, and it was exactly the same as my real bedroom, and I heard something scuttle on the ground. My brain decided it had to be a big spider to make so much noise, and I was scared to look over the bed because I hate spiders. But then my brain told me that spiders that size probably did not exist, so I ended up looking. The scuttling stopped at the exact moment I started moving, and I saw the hand. It was half hidden by the darkness of my room, but it was completely still and right next to my bed. I think I wanted to scream, but I didn't. That's why I'm not sure if it was real, because I felt frozen, and when I blinked, it was gone, just like the time I saw it in the doorway when I was little. Until then, I could tell myself it was just some kind of phobia or something. I don't know. A product of my imagination. But something freaky happened this morning. You know that moment when you take a shower and you have to close your eyes to wash your face? Well, I was doing that, and I felt something touch me on my left thigh, and I didn't see anything when I opened my eyes. At first I thought it was the shower hose that had somehow grazed against my skin while I was moving, but it was nowhere close to me. I feel really uncomfortable. Something was in the shower with me and touched me, and I don't know what, and I sure hope it's not what I think it is, because how could that be possible? But I'm fucking creeped out, guys, and honestly, I hope I'm not just being delusional or something, because if I'm not, what if it touched me before, but I was sleeping? How can I be sure it's the first time that it touched me? Why is it following me? Is it real? It's honestly scary, and I don't know what to do. I live in the center of a small country town, in a shitty apartment building with my mother. As cliché as it sounds, it's true. Now, scary stories and ghost fanatics always piqued my interest, but I have never thought twice about a bump in the night or a tapping on the window. That was until 3 weeks ago. It was a normal night for me, fall asleep at about 11 p.m. and wake up a few times throughout the night. My bedroom was on the second floor, and because the apartment was so cheap and dingy, every time you stepped there would be a long creak along with it. Now, I'm a light sleeper, so every single small sound wakes me up, but I always fall asleep a few seconds after. This one particular thing that woke me up, though, was the sound of creaking footsteps walking across the floor towards my room. I was in a position in which I was facing away from my doorway, and instead facing my dry wall next to my bed. Immediately, I was pissed off that Mom would be even up in the middle of the night. What time was it anyway? I was usually easily irritable, seeing as I always felt tired. I was such a light sleeper, it always felt like I barely slept a wink. The fact that I was being woken up by someone during my precious sleep egged me on to no end. I felt the urge to call out and snap at her, but decided against it. She was probably as tired as I was, and was almost likely just going to the toilet. Her footsteps stopped outside my room, and I sighed in frustration. To my surprise, I heard the door handle turn, and the door lightly creaked open. At the time, I had recently scared my mother with a suicide attempt, so it wasn't uncommon for her to check up on me before she went back to sleep. I figured that she was having last night thoughts or something, and she wanted to just check in on me. Oddly enough, I pretended to sleep like I usually did whenever she did this. I don't know why, but I figured it would be awkward if my eyes flung open as my mother was kissing my cheek. She would usually just lightly touch my foot and whisper me good night before heading off to bed herself, but she didn't step foot into my room. She stayed at the doorway, her breathing slightly ragged. I was confused and mostly annoyed, but kept my eyes shut and my back to her. It must have been a good minute or so before she turned and made her way down the stairs, which were outside of my room. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I simply shrugged it off, turned over, and fell back asleep. That was until the next morning, when I awoke from an incoming call from my mom. I tiredly reached over to my bedside table and put the phone to my ear. Maybe she had gone out to the store and needed to ask me something. There'd be no reason to call me while we were in the same house. "Hello?" My voice croaked with the first words of the day leaving my lips. "Hey, darling. Sorry for not coming home last night. I got a bit carried away with the alcohol." She ended it with a laugh. My heart stopped. "What?" "I said I got a bit carried away." No, before that." "Sorry for not coming home last night?" She seemed a bit confused, and my eyes never left the ajar door of my room, evidence that someone or something had opened it last night. "Is everything all right, sweetie?" Deciding not to worry her, I reassured her that everything was okay and hung up. I had completely forgotten that I was home alone. Now, nothing had happened since then, but I've been scared shitless and sleeping with the lights on every night. I just hope that whatever it was, it doesn't come back. And if it does, I spoke to my mother about it and she got freaked out, thinking it was a burglar. We checked for hours, but found nothing stolen, nothing out of place. Deep down, I had a gut feeling it was something paranormal. Looking back on it now, I'm glad that I pretended to be asleep. God knows what it would have done if it knew that I was awake. My uncle's house feels so empty since the disappearance. I can't explain it, but walking through those dusty, quiet rooms, I knew right away he'd never be coming back. My aunt's nerves were shot. It was left to us, cousins, to shift through the remains of their lives, to pack his memory in cardboard boxes, bound for some storage unit off the interstate. I was going through the closet in the master bedroom of their 2-story suburban house this morning, when I found my uncle's diary. The bulb was blown in there, the cloudy sky so dim I almost missed it, but there it was, a leather-bound book beneath a loaded shotgun and a massive pile of my aunt's shoes. I felt a need to share the last things he wrote. July 24th. There is a boy in my garden. I noticed him for this first time when I sat down for coffee. He was less than a shadow at first. I only notice him when I'm looking at something else, like my reheated frozen egg sandwich or the newspaper. But the more I tried to look away, the stronger his presence felt. A long spreading shadow. No child looks stretched out like that. No child has such long strangle fingers or twisted feet. God, I must be going crazy. The uncle I remember would never write this way. He was the kind of guy who always had something smart to say about my nose ring, the kind of guy who would get drunk with his brothers and knock over a bowl of tortilla chips, roll on the carpet laughing, and not clear up afterwards. He wasn't the sort of person who would think like this, unless it was something he saw with his own eyes. I kept reading. July 26th. He was there again, after work. Every day he gets a little closer. I swore I thought I heard him say something as I rushed from the car to the front door. I won't look behind me anymore. I won't even look at the window. I walk by at night and hear the rustling of the trees out the boulevard. It's mixed in with his voice. My wife, bless her heart, hasn't noticed a thing. Not that she would. It's been years since we really talked about anything. My daughter just rolls her eyes as usual. Life goes on as normal, and yet he's there. July 31st. God, what does he want? 3 nights I haven't sleep. That awful tap on the windows. Got hold of them. Dusk till dawn. I was angry at first. I wanted to open the blinds, but I felt the scream start building up inside before I even got close. Freakish tall, he must be, to tap on the upstairs windows like that. He must have an overlarge head, like a baby's, and eyes the size of dinner plates to watch me wander from room to room. Wife asked me what I was doing last night with the light on in the office. Told her I was reading the Bible, and I did. But the tapping, God, the tapping didn't stop. It goes on like this for a while, rambling. He talks about how your life can go off the rails, and as long as you're going through the motions, nobody notices. He talks about feeling like a ghost in his own house. August 3rd. Took the last 2 days off. Told the family I was sick. Wife brought me some chicken noodle soup in a mug, then ran off to whatever she does during the day. I didn't like that backward glance she gave me as she shut the bedroom door, like I was some kind of freak. I am not a monster. Daughter noticed nothing, of course, too busy with those future meth heads she calls friends. I can hear her. Christ, what time is it? She came in all right. Yelled at me to mind my own business when I picked down the stairs. Slammed the door. Slammed it so hard it flew back open. And the shadow leaked in like oil. I didn't want to see what it looked like. Didn't try to protect my family. I just ran to the damn closet. It's funny in a way. Hilarious, actually. Do they even notice? They don't notice anything. They didn't notice the drinking. Hell, maybe I even lost control on purpose. Just to see if they'd care. I lost control too many times. That's why I had to get out of the house. It wasn't my fault. What was a kid doing in the street at 12:30 at night? And what was I supposed to do? Let one little car accident ruin my whole life? I'm an office manager, for Christ's sake. I have a wife and a kid who would confess to something no one saw, and for what? Just to spend life in prison? Fine, I did it. I pulled what was left of him off of my front bumper, wrapped him up in the trunk, and then dumped him in the woods on the other side of town. Hit a deer. That's what I told the mechanic. Life goes on. He is here now, not standing in the yard, not tapping on the window. In the house, I heard him coming up the stairs. He took his time with it, like he knew I was listening. Hiding in the closet, like we're playing hide and seek. The wife and kid? Maybe they can't see him. Maybe they're all monsters. I don't know. The bedroom door is opening. I can hear those fingers I never got around to greasing. At least I've got the gun. God, the tapping again. It's harder now. Long fingers breaking through the door. That's where it ends. Did my uncle go crazy? Did he really kill a kid? I don't know what to think anymore. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you like my videos and want to see more, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all in my next video.